One day, little Omondi was playing at the village playground when he saw his friend Chacha sitting alone on the swing. But something was wrong. Chacha's doll was whispering in his ear, and Chacha's eyes were cold and distant. "Omondi," Chacha said in a voice that was not his own. "Come closer." As Omondi approached, the doll's eyes seemed to glow with a sinister light. Without warning, Chacha picked up a rock and, in a fit of unnatural rage, struck Omondi on the head. Omondi fell to the ground, his vision fading as he saw the doll's cruel smile. Nyamira was a peaceful village in Kisii County, Kenya, where the children played freely under the warm sun. The village was small, surrounded by lush green hills and tall trees that swayed gently in the wind. Life in Nyamira was simple, and the people were kind and caring. One day, something strange happened. A market trader named Mzee Wekesa came to the village, selling beautiful dolls that he claimed were made by a special artist in a faraway land. These dolls were unlike any the villagers had ever seen. They were dressed in colorful traditional clothes, with bright eyes that seemed to sparkle. The children were immediately drawn to them. Nyamira's parents, wanting to see their children happy, bought the dolls without hesitation. They never imagined that something so beautiful could be dangerous. That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, strange things began to happen. Little Atieno, who had received one of the dolls, woke up to hear a soft whispering in her room. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but when she listened closely, she realized the whispers were coming from the doll. Its eyes, which had seemed so kind during the day, were now cold and dark. Atieno tried to ignore it, thinking it was just her imagination, but the whispers grew louder, filling her room with eerie words she didn't understand. Suddenly, the doll moved, turning its head to look directly at her. Atieno screamed, but when her mother rushed in, the doll was just lying there, as still as ever. The next day, Atieno didn't want to play with the doll anymore. She tried to tell her friends what had happened, but they didn't believe her. They thought she was just trying to scare them. But that night, other children in Nyamira began to hear the same whispers. The dolls would come to life, moving around when no one was looking, whispering strange and terrifying things. Little Omondi, another child in the village, found his doll standing in the middle of his room, even though he was sure he had left it on the shelf. The doll's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and it seemed to be smiling, but not in a kind way. It was a smile that made Omondi shiver with fear. Soon, the whispers turned into voices, and the dolls began to speak clearly. They told the children to do things, bad things. Atieno's doll told her to take her mother's favorite cooking pot and hide it in the forest. Omondi's doll whispered that he should break his father's special walking stick. The children, scared and confused, started doing what the doll said, afraid of what might happen if they didn't. As the night fell, the dolls grew bolder. They no longer whispered. They screamed and shouted, demanding that the children obey them. Some of the children tried to resist, but the dolls became angry. Atieno's doll threw itself against the wall, making loud banging noises until she did what it wanted. Omondi's doll twisted its head all the way round, making him cry out in terror. The children of Nyamira were no longer themselves. They began to act strangely. Their once bright eyes now dull and empty. At night, they would wander the village as if in a trance, their dolls clutched tightly in their hands, leading them through the darkness. One day, little Omondi was playing at the village playground when he saw his friend Chacha sitting alone on the swing. But something was wrong. Chacha's doll was whispering in his ears, and Chacha's eyes were cold and distant. "Omondi," Chacha said in a voice that was not his own. "Come closer." As Omondi approached, the doll's eyes seemed to glow with a sinister light. Without warning, Chacha picked up a rock and, in a fit of unnatural rage, struck Omondi on the head. Omondi fell to the ground, his vision fading as he saw the doll's cruel smile. Meanwhile, Atieno's doll had a different plan. It whispered to her that she needed to show her power at school, to prove that she was special. The next day, Atieno brought her doll to school, hidden in her backpack. During lunchtime, the doll instructed her to put something in the food being served in the cafeteria. It was a small bottle of poison that the doll had somehow provided, a dark liquid that seemed to pulse with evil. Atieno, under the doll's hypnotic control, poured the poison into the large pot of food without anyone noticing. As the children and teachers ate, they began to feel sick, their faces turning pale, their bodies weak. Panic spread through the school as one by one, everyone collapsed. Atieno watched, her doll whispering praise in her ear, telling her that she had done well. But it didn't stop there. The doll's influence spread like a disease, infecting the children's mind with dark thoughts. They began to worship the dolls as if they were gods, performing strange rituals in secret. They carved symbols into the ground, chanted in languages they didn't understand, and offered small animals as sacrifices. The dolls, feeding on this dark energy, grew more powerful, their control over the children tightening like a noose. The parents of Nyamira were terrified. They didn't know what was happening to their children or how to stop it. The once happy village was now filled with fear and suspicion. Parents began to keep their children indoors, hoping to protect them. But the doll's influence reached everywhere. At night, the children would sneak out, drawn by the doll's evil presence. The village elders noticed that something was wrong. The children, usually so joyful, were now quiet and afraid. They whispered among themselves, eyes wide with fear, and avoided playing with their dolls during the day. The elders decided to visit Mzee Wekesa to ask about the dolls. But when they arrived at the place where he had set up his stall, Mzee Wekesa was gone. There was no trace of him, and none of the other traders had seen him leave. It was as if he had just vanished into thin air. Mzee Ocha, the village elder, knew that they had to act. He called a meeting with the other elders and shared an old story from his youth, a tale of cursed objects that could only be destroyed by fire blessed with sacred herbs. But these herbs were rare, found only in a dangerous part of the forest that no one dared to enter. A group of brave villagers, led by Mzee Ocha, ventured into the forest to find the herbs. The journey was perilous, with strange sounds echoing through the trees and shadows that seemed to move on their own. But they were determined to save their children. After days of searching, they finally found the herbs and returned to the village, exhausted but hopeful. Meanwhile, the dolls, sensing that their end was near, grew desperate. They commanded the children to perform one final horrific act, to gather at the village square and offer themselves as sacrifices to the doll's dark master. The children, fully under the doll's control, obeyed without question, their eyes empty, their minds consumed by darkness. As the children gathered in the square, the villagers prepared the sacred fire. The herbs were placed in the flames, which roared to life with a bright, purifying light. Mzee Ocha led the villagers in prayer, calling upon the spirits of their ancestors to aid them in this dark hour. With the fire blazing, the villagers rushed to the square. The dolls, sensing danger, tried to flee, but the villagers, driven by the need to save their children, snatched them from their children's hand and threw them into the fire. The dolls screamed, a high-pitched inhuman sound that echoed through the village. As they burned in the sacred flames, the children, freed from the doll's control, collapsed to the ground, weak and confused, but alive. As the last of the dolls was consumed by the fire, a great darkness lifted from Nyamira. The air, which had been thick with fear and malice, became clear and fresh. The children, though shaken and scarred by the experience, began to return to their old lives, their eyes once again filled with life. Peace was restored to Nyamira, but the memory of the dolls would never be forgotten. The villagers knew that they had come too close to losing everything they held dear, and they vowed never to allow such evil to take root in the village again. Mzee Ocha, now even more respected for his wisdom, reminded the villagers that they must always be vigilant against the forces of darkness, for evil can take many forms, even the most innocent ones. The villagers, grateful for their deliverance, strengthened their bonds with one another, ensuring that the peace they had fought so hard to reclaim would last for generations to come. But deep in the forest, where the ashes of the dolls had been scattered, a single spark glowed faintly in the darkness, a reminder that evil never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to return. That is it for now. It is me, your narrator, Dave Humble. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'll be seeing you soon with more African stories. Bye.
Yeah.